Now let's talk a little bit more in depth about mixing. Here we have various types of mixing. We have shader mixing and we have color mixing. Now shader mixing is the basic mechanism we use to mix our shaders. It's always two shaders and one mask. And color mixing, on the other hand, is much more flexible. But first, let's just go about our shader mixing. Although if you have watched the introduction or the basics, you may have an idea of how it works. First, we create a material. Here I have copper 08D material. Next, we create another material. Now this one is a grunge material, grunge 10. And if we look in our stack, we can see we have two things, two VSDFs. The VSDF is this shader node we have here. So we have two of those, just pending there hanging. Now we need to make a mask. The mask always comes last. So this time I just made a mask cavity. So let's see how it looks. Oh, and I need to call it after the high contrast. And we have a mask that looks like this. Now I call the magical word, the mix word. And let's see how it looks. So as you can see, we've used this mask here to mix these two shaders that were on the stack. So since we didn't call out, because if I were to call out after the shader, I would get an empty stack. So you have to make your shaders and not call the word out. Out is just the final step for our shader. So just leave them hanging there. And let's see again. So where the mask is black, we get our previous material, and when the mask is white, we get our new material. Now that we have the mix out of the way, let's move on to color mixing. This is a little bit more interesting. Let me show you this material I have here. And it says wood 25 at 0.3 in scale, and you can see it's very gray, but this is pretty much on purpose so I can lay color on top of the material. And with the final release of neotex, you'll have the color library I'm using. It's the HTML color library, but it's all the colors are made as words, and they're all in lowercase. So you can call colors like a dark gray, or I think is lemon something. It's a ton of colors. So I'll include a PDF with the reference for the colors. Now let's see this color, this brown color, and with the word RGB makes it a color node here, and the output, it's okay, but now I want to mix that color with the texture I had on top. So if we see our stack here, you can see that we have our RGB node, and then we have our diffuse node because I'm editing the diffuse. So I just drop in a mix mul word, and you can see it adds a mix RGB with the operation set to multiply. Now you can also say mix add. So let me run it, and it will add it, mix sub, and it will subtract it, mix over, and will overlay it, and mix dodge. Let's see. And you have pretty much all of these as a word to mix the color directly. So I want a mix small. You can also have words such as percentage mix. So for example, I say 50% mix. Let's see, and it will mix it directly. That means equal parts of each one of the words. So if I turn it to 100, or here it says 1.0, it will just be one color. If I set it to 0, it will be the other. So 50 mix, it's basically the midpoint between those two. You can also say 10 mix, and it will just be 10%. Next up, we have a few words that are very useful, and that is the percent dark and percent light words. So let me just convert this to mix multiply again, and let me show you how this works. So 60% dark, it just mixes with black at 60 at 0.6%. Equally percent light will do the same thing but with white. So it's very handy when you want to, you have the color but you want to make it a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. You can just use our percent dark. Let's say if I say 90% dark, it's mixed at 0.9 with a black color. Okay, next up is the desaturate word, which can be used just as desat, like this, and it will completely desaturate the mix. Or a more useful way for color working is the percent desat. So let me show you here. It says 40% desaturate, and what this does is just add a desaturate node that comes from our color and then mix it with the color without the desaturate in the proportion that we set, and it's very handy. So if we show this color here, let me see how it looks, the final material color. Oh, I have the out already, and it looks like this. It's not much, the diffuse is not much, mainly because the color comes from the specular, but it's still there. If we look at an angle, we can sort of see the color. So this is the basics of our editing of the color mixing. Let's see how it looks with a specular. Let me see the specular color, and it's very white. I think, yeah, it's very white. It's very shiny, I think. Although there are parts that are super rough, like this one, but it's mostly gray. So what if we say, let me make it 90% light, so I want it very matte. Let's see how it looks. And I overblew it completely, so let's just make it 50. That's getting a little bit better. Let's say 75. That's overblown, so I think the range will go from 50 to 60. And let's see how that looks with the material set. And it's a little bit more matte. So that's pretty much it for our color mixer. With these words, we can make a special word like this, if you remember. A word, let's say X, just for convenience sake. And let me just copy this, cut it, and say that X means this. And I end it with the semicolon, like so. And I can just say X, and the result should be the same. Yep, and it's the same. And if I look at this here, you can see that it's just how we made it here. So using these words, you can make your own words for color correction. So if you are working on a project and you have a specific color you want to target, you can just make a word and always just toss it in and then mix it with another color. That's pretty much it for our color mixing tutorial. So I'll see you in the next